If you want to build a following, start a campaign. I think there's a lot of people out there that build a following with just utter nonsense. The tipping point of 1.5 degrees, I think the awareness is there. I'm certainly not in the camp that doesn't believe that. I fully believe that, and I've done something about that in creating Blue Earth. But Blue Earth is not an awareness campaign. It's a campaign to transform the way the world works, and that is going to happen by innovation. We've had people that have worked for us for 20 years that have become shareholders in our business, but they are few and far between. They're 1 in 30. And then what happened to the other 29? Some people have worked for 3 months, kind of not working for that guy, and left. And every time I reflect on that and I think, God, could I have changed? And most of the time the answer is
in this Sports and Outdoor Mentors episode, I chat with Will Hayler, co-founder and CEO of Blue Earth Summit, the platform for change. We chat about his choice to be an entrepreneur straight out of university, how success and failure led him to co-found Blue Earth Summit, and much more. I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, please like and comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Will, maybe before we get into your career and talk obviously about Blue Earth, what actually would you like the audience maybe to get out of the podcast?
I don't have any particular agenda to be on the podcast. I think we're doing things now that does create a level of interest. And I think it's important to put some personality into why we do things, how we do things, and what we're trying to achieve.
We'll get back to Blue Earth a little bit later, but I want to spend a little bit of time on the journey up until there, because I think it's quite an interesting, I know it's quite an interesting journey. But maybe we go all the way back to the time when you finished university. So you think at that point you took the decision to almost immediately found your own business, as opposed to necessarily taking I don't know whether it's right to call it the easier route, but let's say the corporate or the employed route. So, and you've obviously stayed on that path ever since. So was that something already at that age, once you finished university, that was like, okay, this is a conscious decision, I want to be my own boss. I don't want to work for somebody else?
Yeah, well, I made the decision to go to Newcastle University because there was surf there. And I made that decision to then pick a course that I'd just be interested in. And that was a politics degree. And 2 weeks before enrollment started, rang up Newcastle, haven't got space for one more, have you? There was no space in any of the halls. It's just like, I'm there and I'm going to do politics because I don't know anything about politics. And I've just, as I get older, I just hear a lot about it. And that I think is what untethered me from the normal journey that so many people take. I was lucky to have an education that set me up for university. University was never really a question for me. That was always something I was going to do as part of growing up. But then by doing a degree like politics, where there was no ambition to be a politician, so I'm just doing it because I'm interested in a subject, and that I think completely changed my perspective on the world and also any chance of having a normal career.
So was that way, because I believe at the early days you were, for 3 seasons, you were a surf instructor. So were you doing that in Newcastle while you were at university, or did that come after?
Yeah, so I was at Harlin Surf School down in North Cornwall. Okay. And one of their top instructors, who was a bit of a hero of mine, who's known within the industry, a chap called Joel Gray. He was a surf coach at Harlin. I thought, that's cool. That's what I want to do. I want to go and teach at Harlin Surf School, and he was there doing it, but he was living in the northeast. He's from the northeast, but teaching in the southwest. And so I just sort of linked those two together. I was like, I can go and study in the northeast, and I can come back here and teach surfing in the southwest. And that to me was sort of using Britain as sort of the distance is about as far as it gets, up in the northeast, down to the southwest, and study something interesting, and then earn some money. And there's as a sort of 20-year-old, at the time that was good money. You're either pulling pints in a pub or you're standing on a beach teaching people to surf. And there's a lot of development that you can get out of that in terms of getting up in front of people, having the confidence to keep them safe, give them a good time, and hopefully change their perspective on wanting to become surfers. And so that really sort of, I enjoyed that job. I was very engaged in what it was to have that job, and I was proud of that job as well.
And then that led then to your first business. So you graduated from uni, and then you started. You explain what you started.
So teaching surfing in Cornwall, you could imagine it, and since then it's become a much bigger industry. But when we did it, there wasn't a surf school on every beach when we first started. But the best client you could get was someone that would say, "I want to book you for the whole week," and then by the end of it, you were just surfing with them, and getting paid. I mean, amazing. And so we thought, how good can you get someone in a week, or how good can you get someone in 10 weeks? And what if you had actual proper waves? We were teaching surfing in tiny waves in Cornwall in August. What if you had someone for 10 weeks and you could take someone on that journey? And we were following the idea of a ski season. Like this ski season phenomenon was known, but no one was doing surf seasons in the way that we thought we could. And so we thought, how can you take surfing into the ski season idea, and how good can you get someone in 10 weeks? And that's where Ticket to Ride as a business was kind of born, on the back of a Land Rover in Harlem Bay.
You used the word "we" there a couple of times. So I think you founded that business with your partner, Lindley.
Yeah, Lindley Lewis, lifelong friend and business partner since the beginning. And I think we're stuck together now. We are just a partnership. Whilst I was doing a politics degree, he was doing an economics degree. And part of that graduation, I suppose, as you'd say, was he had to make up a business. And so whilst we were talking about how good could you get someone in 10 weeks and the business of surf schools and what's going on here, he did his economics dissertation on the idea of a surf season. And as we came back to various summers, he said, I think there's actually quite a good business here. And we talked about it some more. And then as summers come to an end, and once you finish university, you're thinking, we better get jobs. Or have we just invented our own job?
Was Lindley a friend before university, or somebody you met at university? Or
So Lindley's a school friend who had not grown up surfing, and I needed a mate to go surfing around the world. So as cheesy as it sounds, I watched Endless Summer on video again and again and again. I couldn't believe that there'd be such a thing to get two mates to go around the world following the summer. And I had always planned to go after school, to go on a year out, gap year. I think they're still called gap years now, but just have that year of just be you, just go out, see the world. And so I'm going to go surfing around the world like Pat O'Connell and Wingnut. And I just watched that film again and again and again. And I said, Lindley, you're coming with me. And we went to all the stops on Endless Summer. Wow. And he learned to surf on that trip. And so, and it's nice to hear he remembers that who taught him how to surf. And then we decided that had been such a life-changing experience. Could we create that into a sort of a product that we could take people on the same journey?
I want to push on that topic of taking the entrepreneurial route rather than the corporate route. Why do that? Because you've left uni with a good degree. Maybe you weren't going to be a politician, but I think still, there are, I'm sure, many skills and the things that you learned that would be useful in business life. So what was really the motivation behind doing your own thing?
I think the motivation to do my own thing is master of your own destiny. As well as surf coaching, inevitably I was always saving up for the next surf trip. How can I get to Indonesia for all of September? How can I make that happen? And so you'd coach surfing and you teach in a bar. And when I was in a bar, you get bar managers. And I was never the bar manager, and that's, thank goodness for that. But it made me think that I wasn't the guy to take orders. I remember working that out when I was cleaning the back of the bar, the mirror. And I didn't think it needed cleaning, but I obviously needed a job because I was standing there probably picking my nose. And this bar manager said, actually, you can go and do that. And I thought, I don't want to do that. And it just it summed up what a job would be. Lots of things that I didn't want to do. Whereas I think that master of your own destiny, do something you truly believe in. Because as far as I was concerned, that mirror was clean. But actually, I just needed, that hierarchy was there. And I sort of quite early on realized that hierarchy wasn't for me. And so do your own thing. be the master of your own destiny.
Then the business, you started in 2005, something along those lines, 2005. And then, so 5-6 years later, you already brought up the fact that obviously at that point there was nothing like a surf season, but you were looking at the ski season.
Yeah.
So in 2011, I think you had the opportunity to acquire actually a business that operated within the ski season. So can you explain a little bit about that process and how that maybe added value to the business, but also the challenges associated?
Yeah, I think we're out on our own on the surf season side. We're going to take people on these trips for 10 weeks, teach them how to surf, put things back into the local community, see South Africa, do all these, it was a really unique product and it still runs today and it hasn't really changed in the 20 years that have followed. But the ski season model was way more established. People were doing season after season and in so many different ways, whether they work in bars, all these different things. But the closest thing that was to us was to become a ski instructor or become a surf instructor. And so one of the businesses that we followed during the build-up of Ticket to Ride was the leading one, and it was called Base Camp. And we just a light bulb moment was like, why aren't these two businesses together? And we got chatty with the founder, and a lot of these founders, you get stuck with the business. You don't necessarily want, it might define your early part of your career, but and what we found is a guy there that he was just a bit like, well, I've run out of energy for this thing, and we ended up doing a merger where we'd put the two companies together and say, right, you can now go surfing, skiing, snowboarding, any kind of board sport you can do in this one company. And then it sort of took a different turn in the fact that how we merged or we acquired that business. And that was when I really sort of, it was a moment in time when I was like, I like this business stuff. This is for me. I liked a bit like if you're buying a car and that you've only got $2,000, but the guy wants 2,500. You've got to come up with a reason why it's 1,800 and then you'll get back to $2,000. And I just love that negotiation. I just found it exciting. I found myself working harder than ever to put that deal together. And I felt really motivated by acquiring a business, merging a business, and then running a joint company. And that's when Ticket to Ride became a Ticket to Ride group. Suddenly our turnover had doubled, our staffing had doubled, our marketing had doubled. Everything in one deal became just that much more exciting. And that's when I really realized that we've got a business here. This isn't just an extension of a hobby. This is a travel business now. Yeah. And so that was our first touch on M&A.
You touched on there before the fact that merging with or acquiring Basecamp was your first kind of adventure in the M&A world. And I think in the past you've said that the following years was almost a bit of a acquisition spree, I think is, words that you've used in the past. So can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what you learned from that process? Because I think it's something that for a lot of people seems completely out of reach and unachievable. Really interested to kind of understand your experiences and lessons learned going through that.
Yeah, I think when you're doing a merge type deal, there's so much I got wrong with that deal that I think one of the motivations is I want to do it again. We'd aim to put this business together, and by the end of the deal, the 6-month deal that I was working day and night to, and the guy that we were doing with, wasn't sure if he quite wanted to do it or not. He was playing us brilliantly, and we just need to see another business plan that I might want to be part of. And then by the end of that deal, you're kind of sick of each other. You didn't really even want to work together, but yet now the two businesses need each other. And I think I'd learned the process of an M&A deal, and I thought if I could do that again, and like I was saying, overnight your turnover's doubled. Overnight, a lot of people ask you when you run a business, how many people do you employ? As if that's the benchmark of your success. And suddenly we were a double the size team, and suddenly everything was double. Yeah, I definitely wanted to do it again because I loved the toe-to-toe element of it. It's just business. Actually, me and the guy that we did the deal with, we actually got on really well. We'd much rather have had a pint together than do the business bit. But both of us were kind of loving the business bit as well. It was competitive. And so then having done that and then settled the two together, and agreed that we would be the ones that ran the business. You were like, well, hang on, what other businesses that would overnight transform? Which we were a growing company, and I think one of the big ambitions that I had was to keep up with anyone that had got a normal career. So I've gone into the adventure and action sports world, and I want to keep up with all my mates that have gone and done a legal profession or a whatever they'd done. I just wanted to keep up with my lifestyle choice. My lifestyle business needed to be a serious entity. And so then we started looking at other opportunities, and there was a surf travel company. Then we started inventing other companies. We just put this group together that just always connected. If you're into surf, skiing or snowboarding, Ticket to Ride's the place for you. And we just covered off a load of bases and did some deals well, some deals less well, and learned quite a lot along the way.
So looking back at that period, if you could do it again, what would you do differently?
I think there's one thing I'd do differently. Businesses are cheap for a reason. And I didn't know that in my 20s. I was like, well, that's all we could afford. We didn't have, we never took any investment from ourselves. It was the money we'd made as surf coaches and money we'd made. I was working as a roofer. I was a labourer during the day. And then they would start at 6 a.m. and finish at 4. And then I'd run our own business by then. So we were always organic cash. So we never had someone said, oh, there's a couple of £100,000, go and buy your competitors. It was kind of, we've got to merge with our competitors and then we've got to make this thing. So my lesson is some of these businesses that would open their arms to the idea of an acquisition, they were probably not very good businesses. And we then were left to pick up the pieces to say, well, how do we make them good businesses? And that was always to do with marketing and media and their messaging and their branding. And that's what got us into the creative agency world.
So yeah, I think around 2014, at this point, you obviously had a few different businesses, and you were working with some marketing agencies and maybe some frustrations in what they were delivering for you. So of course, you decided to launch your own marketing business. So is it that simple, or what were the drivers there, and what were those early challenges in doing that? Because it feels like that's quite a departure. I mean, I understand that, of course, it's focused from an industry point of view on surf, on snow, on skate, etc. But in terms of the capabilities to do that, I'm assuming it's quite different to running a travel business. So yeah, how did that come about, and how did you deal with those kind of new areas to get into?
Well, I think by the time we started our own marketing agency, I'd been running a surf, travel and ski, surf, snowboard and ski business for 10 years, and done all those deals where you need to quickly redo the website, quickly rebrand it, because they were cheap for a reason. And funnily enough, those are the things that fall by the wayside as companies go on the decline. And I'd go into these marketing agencies. We were based in London as a business, because I think we wanted that ambition to be a business, not a lifestyle business. And then we'd go into these very swanky marketing agencies, and you'd be like, you're making too much money here. That was always what I felt. And I was like, you talk in the sales time at the sales meeting to the director, and then suddenly you get the account manager, and then by the end of it, the whole thing sort of slightly sort of waterfalls down to quite a sort of lukewarm service. And we had a situation where we needed to redevelop a website for a chalet business, ski chalet business that we were running. And by September, it wasn't finished. And then by the ski show, it wasn't finished. And then by November, I went into the meeting and the guy said, look, Will, it'll be ready when it's ready. And I was like, well, we've just booked 5-6 chalets for the season. We've got to fill them. And I just remember this sort of red mist rage just came over me. And, I talk about being emotional in my 20s. I couldn't believe he was saying this. I was like, we are going to not fill these. The risk we'd taken as a tour operator to take these buildings, rent them. We didn't buy them. We obviously just rented them. And we're not going to fill them because of this 25-year-old account manager had basically said it is what it is. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. And I actually felt out of control rage on that. And I was like, that I can't be in that situation again. And so what we ended up doing is hiring our own web developer, our own graphic designer, and we just thought, well, let's just see what happens. Let's just see if we've got that in-house, where will we be in a year? We've no idea. But I did remember that those marketing agencies were making too much money. And that, I think, was something I was like, well, I don't think I need to be paying you as much as we're paying, and we're certainly not getting the service. So that's a sort of default launch into creative agencies.
And so that was Wavelength. And so initially it started out then as let's say, a creative agency to help you run the other parts of the business. But then Wavelength then developed into, I would say, more than just a creative agency. So you started to do events. I think you were publishing as well a surf magazine. So again, it's kind of all growing. And was that very organic, or was it just a conscious decision that, okay, no, we need to add to it?
Well, I think cheap for a reason. When we talk about acquiring businesses, we had assembled through Ticket to Ride the web developer and the graphic design and all of that capability. And then we were running probably Europe's leading surf travel company at the same time. And we bought that one out of administration, which was a lesson in itself. And we'd taken over the business, and suddenly we needed to do a new website. And Wavelength rang me. Rang the office, and they said, would you like to buy advertising? I said, well, I don't want to do any advertising. We want to be involved in your content. We want to talk about Sri Lanka and this, and then it will be travel tips, and we'll do a regular feature. And he goes, I can't really sell you that because that's not on the rate card. And as I put the phone down, I was like, I bet that guy is not selling any advertising at all. There's just no way that this is a credible business. Like he hasn't sold anything for months. So I just said that in the office, as you do when we used to work in offices next to each other. And our web developer at the time went, well, why don't we buy them, Will? As a sort of web developer-y, jokey conversation. And I just said, well, I bet it's not worth very much. I bet Wavelength is not worth very much. Having read it my entire life, it's Europe's original surf magazine. So I rang them up and I said, we're not going to buy any advertising, and sorry you can't do the editorial features, but would your owner like to sell? And quick as a flash, he was on the phone to me saying, we'd love to sell. We have a running title and a mountain bike title, and we don't really know what to do with the surf title. So we took it over, and with no real plan other than we're going to sell some surf holidays with this. And I'm now running a magazine that I used to read and cut out the pictures and put on my bedroom wall. Most people were sort of cutting out FHM and Loaded. I was hacking up all the surf magazines and putting them on my walls. That's what inspired me. So I was so excited by this. And I was like, this, not only is it linked to my travel company, it's also going to give my web team a job. It's going to give my designers some real passion project to just be able to make something better. Because by that time, Wavelength was really sort of second fiddle. It wasn't doing very much as a magazine. It was hanging on. And so that suddenly, that's when Wavelength, the marketing agency, was born. Suddenly, we're a creative agency that make Europe's original surf magazine. We've got an identity, and let's give it a go. And that was the story there.
And then from that, you went on. You did some events as well.
Yeah, no, we did events because at that stage, surf magazines were very Newquay orientated. And if you weren't in even though, and we went into that, we based the office in Newquay. We were on the beach. All the ideals of running a surf magazine and a creative agency. But surf magazines don't make any money. Like that, I've learned that. And I sort of knew that at the time, but I was just passionate about its existence and just felt very proud of being involved in a magazine like Wavelength. So I was like, well, how are we going to make money on this? We've got this community. If you surf in Europe or the UK, you've heard of Wavelength. What can we do with that brand? So we started doing film nights. And we would sell cinema in London. We'd sell in Worthing. We were down in Worthing and we sold 450 tickets to Momentum Generation, which was an incredible film all about Kelly Slater and the growth of surfing. And suddenly every time a new film came out, it was kind of an old school throwback. And we would go around the country selling out cinemas. And we were having so much fun doing it. Like it was every quarter we'd have a new film and a new opportunity and a new campaign. And by the end of it, we were bringing in these ridiculous scenarios. Like we got Rolls-Royce to sponsor one. And so we were driving around the UK in a brand new Rolls-Royce, going from Brighton to Newcastle to Edinburgh, in this 280 grand car with a petrol card. And, just actually having a lot of fun doing it, but understanding that events work, the community comes out, you can widen the appeal of a surf magazine and you can run these events. And that, I think, was a light bulb moment to Wavelength as a brand. It's not just a surf magazine.
2020, so in kind of the throes, the heart of the pandemic, where everybody is having to adapt pretty dramatically how they live their lives, and most of that is at home. And you decide, okay, let's launch a new events company. So,
yeah,
talk to me about that.
Well, so in the build up to COVID, and we were already getting to a point where Wavelength, what's the purpose of it? We talk about purpose-led business a lot within Blue Earth, but there always had to be a purpose of it, because if anything, it was such a difficult magazine to run that you're actually surfing less. Strangely, you're running a surf magazine and not surfing as much as you used to before you ran it. So in terms of the we'd already started thinking about the purpose. It couldn't just be more waves on a page. We were always interested in the environmental side. What is the state of the ocean? Surfers Against Sewage is a charity that I've followed my entire life. I think, teens all the way up, and just been inspired by that movement that they've created. But, let's talk about the environment within the pages of Wavelength. Let's talk about being a sort of a grown-up surf journal sort of type thing, and we're taking on the issues. We're really inspired by brands like Finisterre, who were sponsoring, doing advertising and doing all these. And we love their story and about that campaign, that activism. And someone said to me once, if you want to build a following, start a campaign. And that was really hit and sort of a thought there. And it was like, Wavelength is so much more than just waves on a page. It can tell a story about the environment. And so we're already moving into that world. And then through the creative agency, when we're not designing surf magazines, we ended up winning a bank to do all their design work. And it was a phenomenal client to win, but I wasn't really old enough or experienced enough to understand what it would take to have a talented team in Cornwall and a very corporate world in London, and how would that connection work? And it would go through me. Yeah. But we were running their CEO conference in Paris. And so how random is that? We're a surf magazine in Cornwall, and we are running the CEO conference of businesses that we've all heard of. There's the CEO of Vodafone, that bank, that brand, there's Unilever. And it was an event that connected CEOs with investors and brokers, analysts. And for 3-4 years, we ran that, and we were making it. We were trying to work out what the hell we were doing whilst doing it, but never letting the client know that that's what we were doing. And that was sort of 2016 to 2019, and that ended as marketing campaigns often do, 3-4 years. And so we just sort of banked that understanding, and at the same time, our media expectation was to be a bit more purposeful. And so in COVID, when the drama had kind of not subsided, but we felt like we were first into COVID. Bear in mind, we had a travel company with 150 clients in various resorts around Europe, and we had to shut first and quickly. And it was just, there was a point in that sort of March time where it was just the travel industry that they were the first to stop. And so then as it sort of, quietened down, you're thinking, what are we going to do now? What can we use? How can we be resourceful? in the world that we are now living in, which is living from home. Let's invent something new. Let's just get something going. Let's just keep working. And so on the media side, we started the drive-in cinema, and on the marketing side, and that's a sort of funny story that was a really joyous thing. We put these films on the cliff in Watergate Bay. But on the right-hand side, on the agency side, we didn't have that bank anymore. But why can't we invent an event that redefines how we live and work? That's what was going on in the world. And that was the tagline to Blue Earth in 2021, redefine how we live and work. And it was take inspiration from the outdoors, connection via seeing big business connecting, and action to what if something meaningful happened at the end of at one of these conferences, because we never understood what the hell was going on at this bank conference. We were just in the background. And so that, in a sort of very roundabout way, explains what Blue Earth Summit came from and why it is what it is today.
You had 3 years in Bristol, where every year where you were able to grow and get bigger, let's say, speakers and obviously bigger audiences each year. And this year is quite another big step when you, if nothing else, just from a location point of view, but I know from an audience point of view as well, you're moving to London. So talk about that journey a little bit over the years and what have been the lessons that you've kind of learned over those last, 4 years now?
So by that stage, Blue Earth, we had a lot of plates spinning. We invented Blue Earth Summit from a car park in Watergate Bay while showing Point Break during the sunset. And that's a totally different business. And in terms of, we were trying to develop all these different elements that all fit together. We've got media, we've got surf films on a cliff, we've got a creative agency, we've got Blue Earth Summit. They all fit together. And we were the glue that did it all. And I think, to your point of what lessons do you learn, that's a lot of plates spinning, and eventually you're going to drop one. And that, in the last 2 years, has been quite painful, actually. You're like, the event side of Wavelength really took off, and we were running really good events, and I've always run good events, but they haven't always made money, but the customers are always happy. And so what we were doing there was kind of evolving surf media, and what we were doing in Blue Earth was kind of evolving the climate agenda, B2B conferences, and totally different thing. But I could credibly explain to people why I'm the guy that can do both those things. But the reality is we couldn't do all of those things at one time. And so, to your point of what are your lessons learned, and I said at the beginning of this talk that founders often get stuck with businesses. And I kind of, by that stage, got stuck with lots of different businesses by my own making. So I probably, if to go back 5 years' time, I would have made some more conscious decisions to stop that and start that. Yeah. And I never made those decisions, which is in itself, some painful lessons.
Looking back on those first 3 years then of Blue Earth, or first 3 main events, the 3 main summits, what would you say has been the key to their success?
I think Bristol was a big part of it. Blue Earth was made for Bristol. It's a sort of radical city in a lot of what it does, whether it's how it campaigns. People that live in Bristol are very definite of why they live in Bristol. It's that connection to the outdoors, and it's a very cool city to start in. And also, we were so excited by the Bristol Wave. We were involved in the funding of the Bristol Wave via the crowdfunding side, and became an agency service that we did. We'd help people do their crowdfunding, and that was how my brother joined the business. So we've always felt this alignment with the Wave, and we thought, wouldn't it be cool to run a business conference that ends up being a surf day where everyone's in a wetsuit and you're in it together. And we described it as networking in your element. So Bristol was the catalyst to it all. And it was 3 years in Bristol that really enabled us. It welcomed us, Bristol, as a city. And it gave us a lot of lessons, and it gave us a lot of energy. And we can talk about why we've moved it to London, but you would never, I would never change those 3 years because we were learning on the job, and as we often like to do. And so Bristol, we've got a lot to be thankful for. Everyone that was involved in our Bristol days added a huge amount.
Is that advice that you would give others, that, just kind of do it and build the plane kind of while you're flying it? Maybe that's a bad example.
Well, I think that you can build the plane whilst you're flying it. I've never thought of that analogy, or I wouldn't like to be on that plane. No. But if you are doing that, I think a lot of people can say, I had a direct vision from the start. And in all of our businesses, we have had a really clear vision. Blue Earth, we wanted to be the world's leading impact summit for purpose-led business. That was how we started this, and it played into our careers of having purpose, and that really spoke to us to say, there's a point to what we're doing here. But what I didn't appreciate is how hard a B2B event is to run. I remember the week before Blue Earth 1, we were like, what if no one shows up? I think we had 40 tickets booked, and we had 250 speakers. I mean, imagine that. There were going to be more people backstage than front stage, and they all left it so late. They booked the day before, the week before, the month before, but 2 months before, we were like, we've made a massive error here. We've booked this venue. We're in deep shit, actually. That was a scary moment. I remember going round the roundabout at Exeter Services, going, what if we just didn't do it? We're going to really embarrass ourselves here. We've invited all these incredible speakers, our sort of heroes of surf, environmental, campaigning, media, every person I possibly knew, and as our team knew as well. We put them backstage to walk out to empty chairs. And we're like, thankfully that didn't happen, but it nearly did. And that was a big risk point. And I think our appetite for risk has always been bigger than perhaps that's what differentiates founders from non-founders. Your appetite for risk is bigger. So you might actually, as a founder, get on a plane and build it whilst you were building it, but I'm not sure if I'm yet to do that.
Yeah.
But I like the analogy.
Yeah. Okay. So we've spoken a lot about successful enterprises, but of course it's never a smooth path, and rarely does everything work as you planned. And I know that you had launched a few years ago, and you can precise when, music festival, so Spring Classic, that unfortunately didn't work. So looking back at that now, and maybe you've already touched it, maybe it was the thing about doing too much somehow at once, but what were the kind of lessons looking back on that? What would you do differently to avoid that?
I was so proud of that festival, and still am in a lot of ways. I'm not proud of what it's cost me, my brother, and Lindley as 3 founders. It's been really, really tough to have shut that in the way that we were forced to. But in terms of what we ran there, which was a really authentic surf music festival on the north coast of Devon, we had so many things counting against us in terms of working with the local council, getting acts, doing all these things. And really that was driven by, we used to annoy us at the drive-in cinema at 9 o'clock. The people would get in their cars and watch the movie. And by that stage, we were like, well, is that it? Like the cinema, imagine standing in the foyer of a cinema, you're thrilled to see everyone turn up. They walk in to the cinema, they watch the film and they leave. It's like sort of the event ended at 9. And we were like, well, what if we took the film out, but put the bands in and replace that? We would get an opportunity to run Wavelength's Surf Music Festival, which, bear in mind, Wavelength was the thing that started the Boardmasters. And, that was by a chap called John Conway, who had 1981, his issue 1 of the Surf magazine, needed to sell it, started a surf competition called the Boardmasters. That was the history. And we really were respectful and continue to be respectful of the history of Wavelength. How could Wavelength get its festival back? Because by that stage, the Boardmasters has become what it is today, which is inspired by surf, but really it's a nationally recognized, it's up there with Reading. So that was it. And so I look back, and what do I look back at? We didn't have a financial plan to lose money. And everyone said, you won't make money out of this thing until year 4. And we thought, well, we might make money in year 2. But we definitely will in year 3. So we ran year 1, year 2, like really successfully. Our what would you call it? Our complaint hotline was very not used. No one complained about it. It was just a lovely festival that everyone felt part of, and it had all the magic that you would want a festival to have. But in the back accounts trailer, we were just losing money, and there was a plan to make money. There was never a plan to lose money, and that I think what I've learned in the last 2 years is think of your worst case scenario and then think about it again and then have a plan for that worst case scenario. Don't say your worst case scenario isn't worth thinking about, because it definitely is worth thinking about, because when you're in that scenario, have a plan. And so I would like to have gone into that festival with £500,000 to £1 million of invested money into the long growth of a festival, and it would have worked. It did work. I just couldn't afford to fund it for its journey.
Yeah. So tough experience on you all then.
Well, definitely, because how did we fund it? We took loans, and we believed in what we were doing. We were kind of romanced by what we were bringing to the Wavelength brand. That the sunset. Sunsets weren't less lost on us. You've got a music venue. You've got the sun setting. The North Devon World Surf Reserve had just been announced, and we were kind of a part of that celebration. And it was just a really like wholesome thing that just had to work. The business, I think people will often say, perhaps on your podcast, just do something well and the business will follow. And so we sort of believed that, and we did do it well, but the business took too long to follow, and we just couldn't keep up with the cost. And then you think, okay, what was the plan on the cost? And the plan was that brands would cover it. The outdoor brands came near it, got to it, liked it, but their budgets were going backwards. And at the time, we were trying to buck that trend. And I think perhaps we weren't having direct enough conversations with those brands to say, we're relying on you to run this festival, and so we won't put the tickets on sale unless you commit. And so obviously they didn't do that. And they would come up with, we get our budgets in April, but we're all good. Everyone was all good. And so we'd have to put the tickets on sale in November. And then you think, okay, what's paying for this? Either your tickets are paying for it or your partners are paying for it. But if one drops, and in our case, in year 3, partnerships went from, 6 figures to under 30 grand. We lost 100,000 quid of partnerships. And at the same time, production costs were going up, artist costs were going up. This was cost of living crisis. And also you're asking people in November to buy a festival ticket when the news is saying that energy prices are at their highest. Can people afford to heat their homes? And that wasn't just a problem for, low income families. That was a problem for everyone. And we were at the same time saying, well, don't worry about all that. Come to our festival. And so that was a lesson learned in terms of, it was a kind of the perfect storm, but without having £500,000 in the bank, which is all it would have taken.
It's clear that you lead a busy life. So CEO and co-founder of Blue Earth, husband, father, splitting your time between London, Cornwall, and I'm sure other locations as well, as I know that Blue Earth is not just focused on London now. So, and of course, surfing in your life, hopefully. So I guess 2 questions. One, are you able to find what for you is a good balance to life? And if the answer is yes, how do you do that?
I was saying earlier that I think business is a tool for life. I think in one of my darkest moments of trying to sell the festival to another festival operator who had made it into once these festivals popped through. Anyway, he said he wasn't going to buy our festival because it was too risky. We had weather conditions on cliffs, and unfortunately he gets it, but he couldn't buy it. He just said, just remember, as he was sort of sending me down the river of despair, he just said, business is a tool for life. And if I look back at my career, that is what it's always been. I've just wanted to go surfing. And I think when I look at my life now and you talk about what the motivations are, it's family. Does this business support my family in the way that I want it to? And, I've got 2 young surfers in my ranks now. I've got 2 boys, 10 and 12, and they are, they want to hang out with their dad on a surfboard. And like that is massive switch off. And so I'm sort of going back around that journey again. Endless summers gone back on the thing. I had to, find a video player to get it because it's not on Netflix. It's one of the few films not on Netflix. So yeah, in my switch off is family time, and it's just trying to create a life for them that facilitates our family life, which is not too dissimilar to what I was doing when I was their age.
And you're succeeding in doing that?
I think no. I don't think. I don't have an attitude where anything's enough, and I don't think I've got that sort of psychotic side where it's got to be more. But I don't have an arrogance to me in terms of I've never felt successful. I've never felt anything other than gratitude to people that have worked with me. And I'm aware of shortcomings. And so, yeah, you talk about running multiple businesses in different countries, based, this office is 300 miles from my home. So spending a lot of time traveling. Am I being successful? Rarely do I think I'm being successful. And I think that's a motivation because one day there must be a point of you sit back and feel proud, but it's rare. And I think that's quite motivational in a way.
I wonder if that is achievable, whether it's always somehow, actually it can be this much better. Because I think depending on your attitude, I think, you can always do things better now, whatever it is. So I guess it comes back to whether that time with your family, whether that's what you want it to be. Somehow that's probably more the sign of success almost, because, that's something that you feel. Whereas I think professionally, you will always be able to do something better. Although maybe you would say the same about family. You could always spend another hour or another day or another week with your family, I guess.
Yeah, well, I do know that family is what it's all about. I'm quite a basic person in terms of what am I trying to do here now in my 40s for the next 20 years is build a business that looks after my family and also that I can eventually look back on and feel proud of. And I think, I don't do many interviews because I never feel like anyone's really that interested in what I'm doing. But there will come a point when you do look back on your career, and I feel like we've done a bit of that today, where you're like, I'm really proud of that. It was nice to talk about that festival that has cost like hundreds of thousands of pounds to not run. But there's an element of pride in that. And there's an element of life lesson in that. And I think in terms of we really believe in what we're doing in our work and always have done, whether or not it was teaching someone to surf in your 20s, building the most talented creative agency you can, or doing a most inspiring business conference and climate campaign with Blue Earth. If you believe in what you're doing, I do believe that it'll work eventually. And I think one of the attitudes that I like to take is we make it happen. I don't believe in luck. I don't think it's rarely actually luck. You've earned that luck. You've put yourself in the right place at the right time. You've made that connection. You've kept that bridge a bridge. You haven't burned that bridge, and that can be really tough because when you're growing a company, you don't quite know which direction it's going to go. You don't quite know who you need at various stages of the journey. But yet you do want to look back and go, have I given it everything? Would I do things differently? Well, almost definitely, yes. But with all of the mistakes that have been made, you're always thinking, there's no situation where I think, I wish I hadn't done that. I still think that festival would have worked. And does that make me delusional? Probably. But I enjoy that. That's exciting. Getting up to go to work, to make something happen that you genuinely believe in. Like, you can keep working and working on that. And so what's the measure of success? And I think probably I would believe that you're working because you want to, not because you have to. And I certainly haven't achieved that yet. I still very much have to work to pay the bills. But I would like to get to a point where you're working because you want to. And I see people doing that. And actually they're often not very happy. But let's just aim at that, work as you want to and do something you believe in.
Right at the beginning of the discussion, you talked about that situation where you were behind a bar and cleaning a mirror. And you said that kind of idea of the classic hierarchy didn't appeal at all. So let's flip that on its head today. So how is your relationship and how do you manage that relationship as the CEO and founder of a business with your team today?
Well, I think in 20 years, I've had every manner of different employees. And I would say that I've lost more sleep over the team rather than the business. The business I've always believed will work, rightly or wrongly, but the team and the team dynamic is, I've never felt like I'm absolutely nailing that. And there's, you hire people with all good intentions, and you go through the interview, and ideally you come up with various ways to meet your next legendary employee, and then life happens and life gets in the way, and it might be their motivations are different to your motivations, or as I've sort of got older, the understanding of a founder mentality and employee mentality, they're completely apart. So I wouldn't say that I've got a lot right, I've got a lot wrong. Have I ever felt comfortable hiring and firing? No. One of my least favorite things to do is fire someone. One of my most grateful things to do is the fact that anyone wants to join me in my business and give up their precious time in their working life to work for the business, which is my idea or my North Star, my vision. I've always got amazing gratitude to that. And that can be quite blinding because it creates a loyalty. And I think one of the things I've learned is businesses are not families. We've talked about families, they're teams. And when the team is not winning, it hurts. And if you put it into any sporting analogy, if your team is constantly losing, people get dropped. And I've never felt comfortable with that because these are people that have given me loyalty. They've given me their all, but it might just be that their all isn't good enough, or their relationship with work isn't what they thought it might be when they joined, or the culture of the company has changed because the team isn't winning as much as it was. And I think I've never felt comfortable as the head of HR. And we've had head of HRs, we've hired them and we fired them. I mean, that's a bizarre scenario to be in. But the reality is you, as I'm telling myself, you've got to roll with the punches there. We've had people that have worked for us for 20 years that have become shareholders in our business, but they are few and far between. They're 1 in 30. And then what happened to the other 29? Where did they fit in? And some of our team have worked for us for sort of 18 years. Some people have worked for 18 months. Some people have worked for 3 months, gone, I'm not working for that guy, and left. And every time I reflect on that and I think, God, could I have changed? And most of the time the answer is yes. But every time, am I going to? Possibly not. Like really, like deep down. And what I have learned in my entire career is that businesses are teams, not families. And at every stage of your development as a team, pick the players that are right for the league that you're in. And that's always created, movement.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it does for sure. If the business is developing and you're growing, I mean, it absolutely does. I mean, the people that get you from A to B are maybe very skilled and experienced at doing that, but maybe they're not skilled and experienced at getting you from B to C. So I think, it's super relevant. And your point about business, it's a business, not a family, or it's a team, not a family in a business, is really relevant, because I see still a lot of companies, a lot of business talk about it being a family, and it's just not the case. And then they wonder why there's a lot of disengagement when the latest round of layoffs happens or whatever.
Yeah, it's so painful. I've run our business like a family, and I've had team members stay. Come and stay. We based ourselves in Devon, but I want to get talent from London. So where do they stay? They come and stay in my house, and they're just part of the family. They're on the school run before we go to work, and it's just we're a family. Which I don't think I'd do that again, because what happens there is that if we are talking in the context of family, I'm lucky enough not to have had a divorce yet. Which is all good, but the divorces are painful because it's a lot of emotion that goes into that. So when you create an environment around your business that it's a family, but you remember that you're a team, and you perhaps haven't got the result you wanted, and you've got to change your team, it's better off not feeling like a family in the first place. And I think that would be a life lesson that I've got, because it is so painful. I've got people that have worked in our organization, have given their absolute all to it, and there came a point when the business need changed, or what they were offering wasn't required anymore. And it does feel like a divorce, and it feels hugely painful, hugely personal. And suddenly this person that you're talking to every day is someone that you're not talking to at all anymore. And I've never enjoyed that part of the journey. And I imagine that no one does. So yeah, there's a lot in that, in terms of run it like a team, not a family. I think that's what I tell anyone that's building a team.
So what would you say is your most important role or task as a leader of a business?
Energy.
Okay.
And a make it happen attitude. Because as you get bigger and you there's different constraints. So Blue Earth is a huge amount of the revenue comes from partners. So who's calling the shots here? Blue Earth or partner? But we're an editorial platform in terms of we do choose who goes on stage and who doesn't go on stage. And so suddenly you have to start making decisions that will impact an account manager's relationship with that partner. And I think you've got to have that stubbornness to say, well, this is how we're doing it, because our vision is that we are an independent platform supported by partners, but telling it how it is. And I think in all of that side of things, as the CEO, you've got to draw that balance. Are we looking after the brand here, or are we looking after the partner, or are we looking after the ticket holder? And you're the person that all points connect to. So I'll sit in a partner meeting, I'll sit in a ticket meeting, I'll sit in a brand meeting. And what makes this whole thing tick? It's a feeling of independence, but complete interdependence. And there'll be times when the partnership team won't get why we've done that from a marketing point of view, or the marketing team won't understand why that bit of editing, and I enjoy all that. And I find that if you believe in what you're doing and you're engaged in what you're doing, don't be afraid to just be a bit one track on it. And it's taken, Blue Earth has taken 4 years for me to understand what it is that we're bringing. I thought we were a climate-centric, business-orientated event that was redefining how we live and work. That's what, and that Patagonia would pay for it. If Patagonia did an event, Blue Earth Summit would be it. That's what we started. Fast forward 4 years, we're transforming the way the world works. We have learned lessons in the past. We are invested in as our own business. And we are all about innovation and startups, and Patagonia are a guest of the show, not a headline partner. And it's you've got to navigate that. And I think we've done that, and I think it's been quite a journey, because the outdoor industry is what's inspired Blue Earth from day one. How can we bring our ambition to get outdoors, be healthy, and live a more sustainable life? And what brand in the outdoor industry isn't talking like that? So why wouldn't we run a business festival that says the outdoor industry is the pioneers of that? They are the custodians of the outdoor. It just so happens that the outdoor industry are sort of working out their own being at the moment. But when they get together, all they want to do is talk about sustainability. And so what I've learned in the last 4 years is, of course, bring your pioneering spirit to what Blue Earth is about, that sense of adventure, connection to the outdoors, connection to nature. But our sponsorship, I mean, some of the most forward-thinking outdoor brands, they've gone, yeah, no, we can see that these customers are the ones that we're not talking to. But actually, a lot of where we've gone, and I've sort of moved over to this way, it is into innovation, it is into startups, it's into materials, it's into supply chain, it's urban environment. But all they want to talk about is their passion for being outdoors. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. But in terms of a route of where did it start and what is it inspired by, it is that time spent in the outdoors.
Looking back, who have been the people that have influenced you the most, would you say, professionally?
I look at other founders that have made stuff happen that shouldn't necessarily happen. I look at the Bristol Wave. You know, I look at that centre and I think that needed complete vision and North Star thinking. And I look at what Nick's done there with complete admiration and enjoy conversations with him.
So what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I think if you want to build a following, start a campaign. I think there's a lot of people out there that build a following with just utter nonsense, and I don't quite understand why. But people that have a real passion, a real campaign, a real sense of purpose of what they're doing, those are the people that have earned their following. You talk about earned reach in marketing. Those are the people. Yeah, so the best advice, if you want to build a following, start a campaign. And, you know, for Blue Earth, it's on a mission to transform the way the world works, which is a ridiculous statement that, thanks to the talent and innovations that are now coming to Blue Earth, is actually happening. We're just setting the stage for these transformational leaders to say, how is energy going to change? How are materials going to change? How is supply chain going to change? You know, the world is at a tipping point, and you can either take a negative view on that and go, God, you know, is the world actually going to end? You know, I don't think I'm in that camp that necessarily believes it is. I do believe that the human existence has overstepped its boundaries on the world, but I also believe that innovation that tipping point, that's the tipping point I'm interested in. The energy sector changing. What happens when energy becomes free and abundant through solar, wind, and battery? Because that technology is there, and that tipping point in our next, you know, very recent future or very, very near future, that's happening. And we start talking about a third age of humankind. We start talking about human freedom, and you're like, oh, I want to be part of that. That's the tipping point I want to be talking about. The tipping point of 1.5 degrees. You know, I think the awareness is there. I'm certainly not in the camp that doesn't believe that. I fully believe that, and I've done something about that in creating Blue Earth. But Blue Earth is not an awareness campaign. It's a campaign to transform the way the world works, and that is going to happen via innovation. It's not going to transform by saying we've got that wrong, that wrong, that wrong, and that wrong. You know, that's what a march is there for. That's what Surfers Against Sewage are there to do, and they do an incredible job at doing that. What we're here to do is say, what comes next, and what can we get excited about, and how can we turn that into a bit of a festival?
So what challenges do you see for the business over the next 5 years? Is there anything that stands out for you?
Our main event of the year is the summit, and that is about reconnecting the working world, and that is private sector, third sector, and public sector. And those three sectors they're not traditionally bedfellows. You know, if you got a job straight out of universities where we started, and I went and worked at an NGO, I'm different to someone that went and worked for KPMG or Lloyd's Bank. You're probably different people. And if you went and got a job in politics, which I was very clear I didn't want to do, you're probably different to the other two. And so we've got to continue that outdoor inspiration. What brings these people together? And it is that connection to nature and the outdoor world. If you chat to a CSO of British Airways, first thing that an NGO might want to do is go, you shouldn't be doing that. You're look what you're doing to the world. And they can have that scuffle and they can have that chat. And when we first started Blue Earth, we're like, well, is that the content? Is that what we're selling here? And I think it's not at all what we're selling here. It's how do we get these two to have a serious conversation about what a better future looks like? And that CSO, who now writes reports for a living, was probably reading the same magazine, National Geographic, let's just say, to name any magazine. And they were inspired by nature in the same way that the person that's working in that NGO is inspired by nature. And we bring it together by shared experience and a love for being outdoors. And that becomes our context of power of impossible, doing things that have traditionally been told can't happen. You look at the way the world works, and there's a status quo, there's a disruption to the status quo, and there's a lot of big industry that are very powerful that will say, we are not going to transition to wind, solar and battery. It will create a cost of living crisis, which means you in government will be out of power before you've just got your feet under the desk. And so sorry, NGOs, you're not going to think. And so we need to create a narrative where this world of truth actually is that we're very close on solar. Britain, as an example, is a world leader on wind. And we are at a point where we are going to create enough energy for the darkest day. And that means that on the sunniest day, to put it in really basic terms, we're going to have a superabundance of energy. So suddenly that light being off is a total mindset shift into, well, I'm wasting energy that has been regenerated from the sun, not extracted from the earth. And that tipping point, that none of that was in the business plan for Blue Earth, but it's in the reality of a transformational world and a tipping point that we're focusing on. And so you say, what's the challenges for Blue Earth? It will always be to align, to reconnect the working world, because I do think a lot of the climate movement is born out of what needs to stop, not what needs to start. I do think the corporate agenda needs to be disrupted by new startups and innovations and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of them are just playing at ESG. Even the word ESG has become a little bit sort of a faux pas. And I do think that there's a huge role for the outdoor industry, which is to say we are on the front line of this thing, and the opportunity that they've got to lead as businesses. And you see it with Patagonia. But there's more than one Patagonia out there. And I'm sure everyone in the outdoor industry is sick of hearing about Patagonia did this and Patagonia did that. But all of the outdoor industry have an engaged customer base that is connected to the outdoors, depending on their price point of their product, can afford to care. I think there's a big part of that. And we have to sort of look at how do we get beyond those that can afford to care and get it right through society. But challenges to the business, bringing people together. And, Blue Earth is a for-profit business. We are not a campaign that requires funding, whether it's national or sponsorship. We sell tickets. And the reason we sell tickets is because we want people to turn up, bringing the best of themselves, not just, I'm just here because why wouldn't I be here? We're changing the way the world works. I'm here because I'm bringing the best part of me to this conversation to find solutions that are going to regenerate the natural world. And if you're turning up with nothing, suddenly our ticket price looks a bit expensive. But if you're turning up with something genuinely game-changing, suddenly our ticket price is just par for the course. If you've got a reason to be in that room, then you're going to pay that price. And that's why our audience is not necessarily the biggest event in the world. In terms of impact, in terms of ambition and motivation to be in the room, we've got that going in spades.
What 3 pieces of advice would you give to future leaders in the industry?
I think definitely don't be afraid to look outside your sector. I go to all of the big outdoor industry gatherings and everyone is talking about sustainability, but to each other. And maybe it's because it's a safe space and that's something that you can talk to about. But take your knowledge of the outdoors and nature and your customers and take it to a wider audience, because there's, outside of the climate emergency, and I'd like to say opportunity there, but it just sounds a little bit disingenuous, but it is a climate opportunity to change the way that we work. Be mindful of the other things that are going on. We've got a health crisis in this country. We're still paying for the biggest global health emergency of our time. But then take that out of it, we've also got a hugely unhealthy demographic, in terms of, so that is totally disconnected with the outdoor industry. So as well as talking about climate being your campaign, talk about what does time in the outdoors do for people's mental health, people's physical health, and work out how you can align outside of your industry with government organizations. The biggest thing that the government is dealing with at the moment probably is the NHS. Why is our country so addicted to the health service? Because it's eating all the wrong stuff, not getting active enough, and not connected to the outdoor world. What a golden opportunity that is for the outdoor industry to say, right, government, we are going to run outdoor schemes that widen the net of who has access to the outdoors, and we're going to solve a physical health crisis. I think we're talking also about a mental health crisis and the role of social media. And you can be a pretty sound person and still feel completely drained by what social media has become. And so I think the opportunity for the outdoor sector is, our playground, for want of a better expression, is such a opportunity to just bring people from out of the industry in. And I think the more brands that can get ahead on that, the more they're going to find that they aren't talking to each other about sustainability. They're talking to whole new customer bases. And I think that'd be one thing that I think they would get out of that.
So if today was your last day, you were going to retire, hang up your cap and move back to Devon, and that would be it, what would your message be to your team?
Believe in the journey that we're on, and be proud of it. Be proud of the work you're doing. And I think there is tremendous pride within our team. We're 48 hours away from the biggest Blue Earth Summit we've ever run, and everyone, there's a glow. There's a level of stress, but we've adapted the team that can handle that. And there are people that can handle Blue Earth at the level that it currently is at. But there's a glow of pride, and I think believe in what we're doing and have pride in what you're doing, and that's hugely motivating. That's more motivational than any money that is changing hands here. And so believe in what you're doing and feel proud of what you're doing.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end. Thank you very much, Will, for your time and for being so open and sharing so many great insights. I'm sure the audience will be really appreciative of that. And congrats on everything you've achieved so far. I'm super looking forward to the next few days attending Blue Earth Summit. And thanks again for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Will as much as I did. If you did, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for your support, and I look forward to seeing you soon for our next episode.